Hi, everyone, and welcome to Women Entrepreneurs Radio. And I'm your host, Deborah Bailey. So glad you can join me for this show. And I know that many of you are listening to this show from different podcast directories. This show is available in different directories throughout the Internet. So you can come to blogtalkradio.com/CoachDeb. There you'll find an archive of shows going back to 2008. So please make sure you check it out. Also share it on social media and let your friends know to come and check it out. You can download shows as well, so please make sure that you come to this main page, and you can set reminders for upcoming shows. Also visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/Women Entrepreneurs. You can read various articles and announcements and various things we put there, so please make sure that you stop by there and like the page. The blog, the official blog for the show, womenentrepreneurssecrets.blogspot.com, usually has extended bios of the show, guests, and different event announcements, just different articles and things. So if you're someone who likes to write articles, if you're looking to really post some things and you don't have a blog of your own, or even if you do, we accept reprints, contact me at contact@dbaileycoach.com and find out about the criteria for having your article placed on the blog. The blog does show up on the first page of Google when you search for women entrepreneurs, so please make sure you get in touch with me if you're interested in sharing your article on the blog. And last but not least, you can check out my website, dbaileycoach.com, and find out about my book, Think Like an Entrepreneur, which you can order from the website, or you can just get more information, read some excerpts, and find out more about it, and find out about me and my services. So please make sure you stop by dbaileycoach.com. So I think I have covered all the good stuff for you. So if you're someone who's a regular listener, if you're just stopping by to check it out, many ways that you can keep up with what's going on and what I'm up to, and also to follow up with the many guests I've had the pleasure of interviewing on the show. So please make sure you take advantage of that and share that with your friends. Don't keep it a secret. So what we're going to do is get started right now, and I'm going to introduce my guest. Alelia Bundles is a president of the Madam Walker Alelia Walker Family Archives, and author of On Her Own Ground, The Life and Times of Madam C.J. Walker, the best-selling biography of her great-great-grandmother, which was named a New York Times notable book. After a 30-year career as an executive and Emmy Award-winning producer with NBC News and ABC News, she now devotes her time to writing books and serving on nonprofit boards. An accomplished and engaging public speaker, she's delivered keynote addresses at dozens of events, book festivals, and conferences, including Harvard University, London City Hall, the National Archives, and on all the major television and radio networks, including ABC, NBC, CBS, BBC, PBS, and NPR. She currently is at work on the first comprehensive biography of her great-grandmother, Alelia Walker, whose Harlem Renaissance parties helped define that era. So welcome, Alelia. I'm really happy to have you here this evening.
Delighted to be with you.
So, this topic, as I was mentioning before we got started, is something that I'm really interested in, and I was really looking forward to you to be on to share about Madam Walker, because I think there's a lesson here for a lot of us today, a lot of women particularly, who are looking at different options for their lives in terms of going out in the business world and what is possible. So, why don't we get started, and you can tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and we can get a little bit more into Madam Walker.
Sure. Well, I grew up in a household where both of my parents were hair care industry executives. My mom was vice president of the Madam Walker Company. My dad was president of Summit Laboratories, which was another black hair care company. So I was surrounded by that. We spent our vacations going to hair shows. But my real passion was writing, and my parents were wise enough to realize that every generation has to find its own dreams and passions. And so I became a journalist. As you mentioned, I had a 30-year career in network television news. But this story of Madam Walker had so many different levels and so many different dimensions that I realized it was as interesting or more interesting than any of the presidential elections and hurricanes and earthquakes that I was covering. So I began to try to examine her life as an entrepreneur, but what she did with it as a wealthy patron of the arts and social activist and philanthropist.
Mm-hmm. And that's really pretty fantastic. I mean, how did that feel as you began to find out more about her? And how important that she was. I mean, what did you feel about that?
Well, I think like most kids, you grow up in a household and you don't want to be defined by somebody else. And as I say, my mom was really smart and wise and did not make it a big deal. It was not the center of my universe, so which was very important. And I was really, not that, my mother went to work at this building every day, but I wasn't really that into it. I was trying to live my life. But I began to, in the 60s, people would mention Madam Walker and they said, oh, she's the woman who invented the straightening comb. Well, that was not true. She didn't invent the straightening comb. But as a child of the 60s, that was sort of the thing that everybody said about her. I was really delighted when I began to discover these other dimensions. Important that she was a pioneer of the modern hair care industry. I'm fascinated endlessly by that industry, but I also loved finding out what a political activist she was, how she was involved in the anti-lynching movement, and really what a great American rags-to-riches story she was. Born in 1867, daughter of slaves, no real formal education, and yet she transformed herself into a millionaire and a woman who employed thousands of other women. So I loved that journey.
Well, that's really a fantastic one. That's the one I first heard about when I became aware of her, and I've always been so interested in knowing more about her because it just seemed like, wow, this woman could transform herself in this way. And at the time, I was really in the working world. I wasn't really thinking about starting a business. And it was just something in the fringes, that I'd heard about, and I really was like, wow, this is such a story. But now it really rings so much true to me just to hear this, that someone went out there and made their own way in the world where things were so much different for people at that time, for people, African Americans. I mean, this was not something that was just a regular thing. This is something that really was really important, and we have to acknowledge her courage to step out like this. But I think she has a lesson for all of us today, so many people today who just kind of give up or don't see their opportunities. So, what made you decide, that you were going to write this book and really get behind this story?
Well, the story hadn't been told, surprisingly, and when I was in graduate school at Columbia in journalism, my advisor was the only black woman on the faculty. The more arguments for diversity in faculty. And she recognized my name, Alelia, because it was Madam Walker's daughter's name, and she'd been a key figure of the Harlem Renaissance. And when I was trying to figure out a topic for my master's paper, Phil Garland was her name, and she said, this is what you're going to write about. And that really transformed me because in 1975, I'm telling you how old I am, there were not people knocking on my door saying, please write this book, but Phil validated it for me. And I really did begin to understand just what an example Madam Walker could be for other women, that when you think about her being so poor and being a washerwoman until she was 38, actually being an abused woman, a single mom, all of those things that, we still deal with today, and yet she had the resilience that allowed her to see herself as something other than an illiterate washerwoman. What's also critical to this, and that with things that we talk about today, mentors, networking, modeling yourself on those who are more successful, She was a member of a church. She was a poor washerwoman, but she was a member of the AME church in St. Louis with more middle class, more successful people around her. They embraced her to help her. So she saw these examples of people who were being successful and wanted to be like them, wanted her daughter to have an education. And those kinds of things we still see. If people are receptive and if people are willing to help, you can move from one place to another. You can improve your life.
Mhm. That's very true, and I think it's something that a lot of people now can learn, that they can't do it alone, that there's got to be a support system in place. You know, what are some of the things you could share about how she got started in her business?
Well, her issue was really that her hair was falling out, and you know, people think, oh, Madam Walker and straightening. Well, she did use the straightening comb, but it was really a time where she came up with something that everybody else needed. Most Americans did not have indoor plumbing, didn't have electricity, so bathing didn't happen as often. Washing your hair happened even less frequently. As a result, people had really horrible scalp disease, and she developed a shampoo. She encouraged women to wash their hair more often, and then they applied an ointment that contained sulfur that healed dandruff and healed scalp disease. It seems really basic now, but it wasn't available then. So every generation has some invention that takes it to the next level, and she just figured out something that was really basic that a lot of other people would want. And then her genius was in marketing it, that she used her own image as a black woman, and she could show her before and after pictures where she was nearly bald and then her hair was down her back. She traveled around. She trained other women. She used media. Today we have Internet. Today we have Blog Talk Radio. She didn't have all those things, but she had black newspapers, and she could take the train and travel and train women. So she used all of the things that were at her fingertips.
And that's also another lesson, because I think a lot of people think today that they have to have access to the major media. They don't realize that they could just start, as you could say, at the grassroots. They could start where they are and get out there and market themselves. So that's something that's, you know, a very important lesson for people. But also it seems as though she was very much involved in organizing others, connecting with other women.
Well, and you're absolutely right. That's part of that networking and mentoring. She had seen what the women of her church, the middle-class women who were part of a group called the National Association of Colored Women, would sort of be like the Coalition of 100 Black Women today, or the Links, or some of the sororities where women were coming together in national conventions. And she watched what was happening with that, joined that, and then that inspired her to create her own national organization of her sales agents. So in 1917, the year before Mary Kay was born, she had her first convention of sales agents in Philadelphia. About 200 Walker agents came together, and you have to imagine it was probably one of the first national conventions for American women entrepreneurs. And at that convention, she was pushing sales and teaching them sales techniques and all of those things. She gave prizes like Mary Kay to the women who had sold the most products and brought in the most agents, but she also gave prizes to the women who had contributed the most to charity. So she really saw this opportunity of bringing women together, financially independent women, and having them make a difference. At the end of the convention, the women sent a telegram to President Woodrow Wilson urging him to support legislation to make lynching a federal crime. So it wasn't just about hair. It wasn't just about making money. It was about making a difference.
Wow, that's pretty powerful, because I don't know that you even see that as much today. You know, people seem to do cause marketing, but I don't know how much of them really are often, you know, in a really big way saying, well, you know, yeah, I'm a businesswoman, but I'm also going to be involved with my community and with these larger issues, you know. So I think just, you know, hearing that about her, it's like she wasn't just focused on the money alone. She was looking at the big picture.
Exactly, and I think because she was a woman who had been helped so much by other people, because she'd lived those for almost 4 decades of her life as a poor woman, as a woman who was in need of help, and she saw that she could use her wealth and her influence to try to help others. There were so many causes that she wanted to be involved in, and fortunately there are people today who are doing it, but I think we realize this was something that was done 100 years ago, that I hope can inspire other people. And you mentioned courage earlier. This really came at some cost. Her trusted attorney and advisor thought that sometimes she was allied herself a little bit too much with some of the political radicals. So she was friends with Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois, with A. Philip Randolph and Ida B. Wells Barnett, with Mary McLeod Bethune, and a range of people. And sometimes the federal government did not like that because they thought these black folks were being too outspoken. But she said, this is what I'm going to do with my money. I have lived most of my life as a poor person. What is the point of the money if I can't use it to do something that helps my people, actually, she said.
And that I think I am more struck with that, because just the idea that you're not forgetting, you could say where you came from and what you can do to help others. I think that is so important, and a really important lesson for people who are listening to realize that you can do that, because I've talked to some people who really want to help, but then sometimes they do it at their own detriment. They're not really, they try to help people, but then they're not really making the money. And then it's like, well, you have to be in a certain position where now you can really help, because you're in a position that you're making the money. Now maybe you're in a better place to help others, as opposed to feeling guilty maybe sometimes about making the money, that you have to give it away, or, you should charge less, and you're not viable, but then you're still not helping anybody.
Right. And you have to, it has to be strategic. It's, figuring out, is there an organization that you want to support? Is there a group whose ideals you believe in that you can help funnel it through? So there are many, many ways, and yes, you should not go into, you should not jeopardize your position.
Exactly. I think sometimes women, have that place where they're in between. They feel almost guilty making money, but then they want to help, and you really have to get to a place where you can do that, and kind of put aside that guilt, if you will, that, I'm not supposed to be making money, or, I'm just supposed to be helping and serving and not really doing what I need to do for my business. But what do you can
leverage that. And, but the more you have, the more you can leverage. Absolutely.
Exactly. I totally agree. So what do you think right now, I guess, that we seem to have this resurgence in people looking at entrepreneurship? Is it, what are your feelings about that?
Well, I think many things, and especially things you talk about on your blog and your show, the economy is very challenging. People who thought they were going to be in a secure position realize if they're lucky, they get a buyout, or they get rift, and then you have to figure out, how do I use the skills that I've had? And I think that there's people are bumping up against these glass ceilings. And realizing they have lots of skills, they're quite capable at what they're doing, but maybe they're not as appreciated in their corporation or in the office where they're working, and yet they can take those skills. And I love the stories of people that who have perhaps worked in contracting in the federal government, and they really watch what other people are doing, and they say, I can do this, I can take that knowledge, and now I can be the consultant. But you also have to have the stomach for it, because it's there's a woman I met not long ago, Wanda Alexander, who does a lot of things with HUD and with the housing, and she had to weather the housing storm, but she did it. She had to lay people off. She was able to hire them back, and she said it wasn't fun to do that, but she crossed the T's and dotted the I's and kept on moving. But I think people realize that they're not always appreciated, and it's sort of interesting to me as a woman who benefited from that sort of first wave of affirmative action. I graduated from college. Again, I'm telling you how old I am, but in 1974. And that was a moment when women and people of color so many doors were opening, so much seemed possible. Lots of people benefited from it. There was no Ken Chenault, CEO of American Express. There was no Ursula Burns, CEO of Xerox. Now those people are in place, and there are some really great success stories. But there also are a lot of people who realize that they can be as smart as the person sitting next to them, but they're not going to they're not going to play the politics or be able to rise, and those people have great skills that they can turn into businesses.
That's so true, because I actually was at an entrepreneur panel last night at Rutgers University, and the students are really, really interested. They want to know what their options are. So it was pretty exciting to get their questions and to see that this is something that, they're seeing even from the school, being in school, that, there are options now. And I think that when I was in college, we didn't have things like that. No one was coming and talking entrepreneurship. You were just going to go to the job fair. So it seems like a totally different world, and I hope that's even better opportunities for them as they come out here and see that they don't really have to just fall into line with maybe what was accepted before.
Right. Or they have a strategy, that says, okay, I'm going to do this for 5 years and figure out how I access the system, and then I'm going to take my own show on the road.
The strategy part is very, very important, isn't it?
Yes. Listen, I've worked at my last job, which was at ABC as an executive, and I knew for a year that I was leaving, but I didn't. I smiled, and I kept doing what I was doing, but I knew that I had sort of my eye on the prize, and and then I was gone.
Exactly. I think that's the thing. You're just going to do what you have to do and get ready for your move. So can you share some information about the biography you're working on right now about your great-grandmother?
Sure. Well, I as you mentioned, I wrote On Her Own Ground, The Life and Times of Madam C.J. Walker, a biography on my great-great-grandmother. And I realized there was still a lot more of the family story to tell. So Madam Walker's daughter, Alelia Walker, was such a key part of the Harlem Renaissance. And they're the same 2 or 3 paragraphs are written about her over and over again, and they aren't that accurate. And I knew her life was much more layered and more interesting. Her travels and to Europe and Africa and the Middle East, and her friends, all the musicians and artists and writers of the Harlem Renaissance, her parties, and, what was going on in her house every day, her 3 husbands, all of those things. And I just thought I really wanted to talk about the social scene in New York during the 20s, and she's just the iconic, perfect person to use for that.
Excellent. Yeah, that sounds so fascinating, because I think these are stories that need to be told that maybe just aren't told as often as we would like. We definitely can't wait for Hollywood or anybody else to tell.
No, exactly. Absolutely. Well, and speaking of telling our stories, one of the things that I started something on Facebook. I know you're a big social media person, and it's just so fascinating what you can do. After the Help movie came out, I had read the book and seen the movie, and, I didn't hate it as much as some of my friends, but I also had, I thought it needed some critical analysis. So I decided I would start a Facebook page called Helping Ourselves. So I hope some of your listeners will visit us, where we post articles and movies and plays about our stories that aren't really being told, that we want other people to know. So I think, yes, we have to tell our own stories. We have to take the reins and do that. Exactly,
and that, I will have to visit your page. And I was on Facebook during when the movie came out and seeing a lot of the responses, and kind of feeling myself that this is really saying that we have to do more of that ourselves as opposed to waiting for it to be done, because it's not going to happen. So it's, right now there's so many options for people to just do their own thing. It's just incredible. So we really, a lot of people already have figured that out, but many others, I think, are still kind of waiting for something that's not going to happen. So they really have to decide, well, I have a story to tell, I'm going to get out here with it and forget about waiting for this or, being annoyed with whatever, because it's not going to change. It's just the same stuff over and over again.
Same stuff. So are you a fan of Awkward Black Girl? Do you know that internet
I just heard
TV?
about it, actually. I just read about it on a blog, and I have the link bookmarked. I have so many bookmarks.
Well, I admire this young woman, Issa. I think it's Issa, Issa Rae, Rae, who did Misadventures of Awkward Black Girl. She's somebody who saw that Hollywood wasn't going to do the stories that she wanted to do, and so she's doing them herself.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just the kind of model there is,
I heard, and I had read that she had actually raised a great deal of money,
right,
on I think Kickstarter.com, and that was very impressive. And I was like, wow, I know a lot of people use that site, but I was impressed by the numbers she came up with. So that shows that a lot of people are supporting what she does.
Right.
And, so there's options out there for people. Who's ever listening, whenever you hear this, just understand that, there's options out here. Please don't believe that there's not. So, we've got about 3.5 minutes left, believe it or not. So please let everybody know where they can find your book, your websites. How can they find out more information about you and Madam Walker?
Well, my website's aleliabundles.com, and it's ALELIABUNDLES.com, and that will take you to all my other websites, MadamCJWalker.com and MadamWalkerFamilyArchives.wordpress.com. And you can Google me, and you can Google Madam Walker, MADAM CJ Walker, and we should pop up. I'm on Facebook and under Madam Walker Family Archives, and Alelia Bundles. So I'm pretty easy to find, and I think on your Blog Talk Radio site you've got a couple of my links and on your blog, and I really appreciate that.
Yes,
I'm also on Twitter, but I'm not a big tweeter right now. But I am on there, and I do tweet from time to time.
Well,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I kind of do it in waves. I do it a lot, then I don't, and I do it a lot, then I don't.
I'm afraid to have yet one more thing that keeps me from working on this new book and that takes my concentration. But I did want to share something with you. And the secrets of success, since that's the name of your show, and when you mentioned many times, people get kind of paralyzed when they either have too many options or can't really see their options. But if I could share some of Madam Walker's words. She said that people often asked her the secret to her success, and she would say to them, there is no royal flower-strewn path to success. And if there is, I've not found it. For whatever success I have attained has been the result of much hard work and many sleepless nights. I got my start by giving myself a start. So don't sit down and wait for the opportunities to come. You have to get up and make them for yourselves. Now, that was thunder that was in the background. So I don't know if she was speaking to us, but it's raining really hard here.
Well, that's a sign. It must be true. It's all true. I mean, just her life is a testimony that it can be done. It can be done. I think the first time I heard about her, I believe that she was on a postage stamp. And that was the first time I'd seen her and heard about her. I was like, oh, my goodness, who is this? I have to know more. So, this I'm sure when she started out, she never probably would have dreamed that her legacy would be what it has been, and she can inspire so many people. But that's just it. You never know. You just have to make the start. You just have to make the start and really understand that, the power is within you. So hopefully who is ever listening to this, please, take this to heart. This is real. We're not just talking here. It's a real story, a real person, and you can learn more about her. So please visit the websites and get the information, and then use that to inspire what you're going to do in your life. So this half hour has gone by so fast. It was like I thought I just picked up the phone. Thank you so much. Thank you for being on the show, for sharing this information. I have some articles definitely going to be sharing on my blog, and you're more than welcome to please return and share with us the book when you've got it out there, and any other information that you want to do. I would love to have you on again as a guest.
Well, that's great, and I'll be following what you're writing and learning from you as well.
Thank you so much. And everyone, I hope you have enjoyed this show. I know I have, so, I always enjoy talking to these guests. I'm always inspired, so I'm sure that you also have learned something as well. So please share this with your friends and share it on social media. Thanks so much for joining me, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye now, everyone.
Thanks for joining us. You can also join in the conversation on Facebook.com/Women Entrepreneurs and on the website, WomenEntrepreneurSecrets.com. And don't forget to listen in on dvcoach.podomatic.com and on iTunes.